Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Topics up for discussion this week included the horse trams, the finances of the younger generation, and the introduction of same-sex marriage laws. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Should any work to regenerate Loch Promenade in Douglas be put on hold while the future of the horse trams is decided? In Tynwald this week, Infrastructure Minister Phil Gorn will look for support for a package of measures that would see the horse trams run from Strathallan at the north end of the prom to the War Memorial in the middle in 2017 and 2018. The department says it will then use its analysis over 3 years to make a fully informed decision on the future of the horse trams. But it's been claimed horse trams are being set up to fail. That's according to the Manx Electric Railway Society. Secretary Julian Nutter is calling on members of the public to email their MHK ahead of this week's Tynwald sitting, requesting they put on hold the Loch Prom regeneration, encourage a more modest road resurfacing scheme and retain the trams in full. So what do we think about this? Should work on the promenade be put on hold even longer while the future of the horse trams is decided? Or would you like to see regeneration of Loch Prom start as soon as possible, regardless of any decision over the horses? Let's go to the lines. We've got Jeff on who's got a point of view on this. Hello, Jeff.
My feeling is that horse trams should be kept as they are. There's no significant traffic problems, as I am aware. By the way, I'm Manx and born and bred, I just have to say that.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit confused on this. The scheme is alleged to cost for the whole thing about 21 million or something if the complete promenade revamp is going to be done. I suspect that'll be near 30 million or more, judging by the way a lot of estimates go these days from this source. Yeah.
Well, I think the original scheme was 21 million. I think that the current scheme is more like 17, 18, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, it'll be up to 25 at the end of that, in my opinion. But to just resurface the tarmac, it's going to be about 5 or 7 million, I forget what now. The amenity is superb. You've got the promenade in toto. It's having what the Victorians designed it for, sunken gardens, great views all around the sea and the land. And it was proposed to put horse trams on the seaside, all sorts of other things that weren't satisfactory. We seem to be given two options only, neither of which is entirely satisfactory anyway, I think. And also I suspect that there is a hidden agenda here. Whether it's businesses or a nominal theoretical ideal of having more parking up there, or maybe for passengers, I don't know. But I don't think it'll make any much difference, really. And do we want part of the promenade put over to parking again? Additionally, as I say, I don't think there's been any significant traffic problems with the two-line horse tram. Its heritage has been here goodness knows how long. I know that it is not a prerequisite for keeping it, nevertheless it's part of our history. The horse trams cost a modest amount compared to the 11 million a year income from other tourism bits and pieces, and I just feel I don't trust the situation at all. The other aspect is there are lots of humps and bumps on the walkway on the promenade. It had been sorted out about 10 years ago, I think, but the present surface is cracking and big lumps appearing in it, and I suspect that's one reason why the forces at B want to replace the whole thing and change it all around. But the common sense attitude that the Victorians seem to have had, it's been an effective design with no problems at all, and the cost of resurfacing so much less because the government hasn't got 30 million to spend. You think of all the things it won't spend on small amounts.
Sure. All right, Jeff, and let me just stop you there because you've had a good say about that now. The government makes the point that it's not just a case of resurfacing. They can't just run tarmac over the existing promenade and do a half-reasonable job. The whole thing needs to go down to the foundation to be redone. Apparently, I'm not a civil engineer, but that's what they say.
I hear from another source, 6 months ago on the radio, I think, that the foundations are in general quite secure. and don't necessarily need to replace as such. I don't know.
All right.
But
The
I
other
think
thought is that you say that the Victorians got it right. Yes, probably they did, but they were doing it for hundreds of thousands of people a year, and we just don't have those visitors anymore, do we? So is it not time to at least look at it and think if we can't come up with a scheme that is more fitting for today's tourism market?
Possibly, but what would be more fitting than the amenity that you've got at the moment?
Well, you're saying that you want to leave the two lines down the middle of the road. I don't think that current health and safety would allow that if it was a new application. I mean, maybe they'd get away with it on heritage grounds if they were to redo it. But, I mean, to have two horse trams down the middle of a busy road like that, it's crazy. Would it not have been better to have put it on the walkway, which is underused most of the time, or at the side of the road and sort of move the parked cars by the width of a tram track?
You certainly have problems with putting your horses adjacent to the sea, for instance. You have to see, you know about the debris that's thrown up.
No, I don't think it would be right on the promenade wall. I think it would be further along.
Yeah. Well, sorry, what was the first point you made?
Just the whole thing was designed when we had hundreds of thousands of visitors, and you know, is it not time to think of doing things differently now?
Yeah, I can't. I'd like to hear an alternative apart from just relaying roads and so on. But where do you draw the line? If you had 10,000 visitors, or 50,000 visitors, or 100,000?
Well, one of the things that's been discussed this morning on the two clips that we heard is, you know, some people seem to believe that this is an important part of our transport infrastructure, and I think that the government's thinking on this is that it's not actually. It's a nice thing to have, and it's a nice tourist attraction. But it's not an integral part of our transport infrastructure. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think you've got the same number of hotel passengers, stopping off Parkway on the promenade and so on as you used to have. I remember that in the 60s. But I don't think that's the thing. In fact, I think it is the fact that it's a heritage item in toto, and by chopping off a third of it, it's, as the man said, it's going to be a bit like a fairground. And you see, if you're losing part of it, there's no. If you want to go from Strathallan down to the Jubilee Clock, then you can do it.
Do you not think that the majority of people who use the horse trams now are either holiday makers or local people with family over for holidays or whatever, where they just want to ride on the horse tram? They don't care where it goes to and from.
I don't know. I think some of them would have a reasonably planned journey to go from one end to the other. Can I just take you up on the health and safety thing?
Sure.
I can't imagine anybody would allow a single horse tram down the middle of the road if it's not acceptable to have a double one. And how many accidents have there been with the horse trams? I think you said a few months ago when you're on, you weren't sure of that. But there have not been a lot, and they're very well supervised, the passengers getting on and off by the conductors.
Yeah, all right. Well, I think some good points there from Jeff. Some text in. Stu, the Great Wall of China would never have been built with our lot in charge. How much has been spent on plans? We need to move on, says Bill. Well, in fairness, Bill, I think the government wants to crack on with this. It's just that every time they decide that they've got something that works, somebody will come along and launch some sort of a protest and slow the whole thing down again. I don't give a monkeys about the horse trams, just get the road resurfaced, says Kev. Peel Road got done with minimal fuss, and Stu, I've just heard somebody on your show saying the horse trams bring in 11 mil. If that's true, why are they under threat then, or have I missed something, says Kev. I think it was the Heritage Railway system, the whole thing. I think it was alleged brings in £11 million a year, not just the horse trams. We know that they make a loss. Old Gorney boy saying the prom scheme's going ahead no matter what is a tad premature. Come September, it may be on job seekers allowance. Opinion, wish list, fact from Frank. Cliffy says, what an apt surname. Does this man think the trams will save us from Brexit? I wondered about that bit. Give us all a break. We're sick and tired of listening to this lot. Can we stop being held to ransom by a few objectors all the time? And please get on with things, says Cliffy. The horse trams are dead in the water. The reason the government's prepared to operate them for the next 3 years is to highlight how the new prom looks compared with the old setup. Once everybody sees the new development, trams will get the thumbs down. Just a shame and a disgrace that we have a minister who, as usual, the taxpayer is picking up the tab. Disgraceful, says Ray. Don't know what Malcolm thinks about it, but let's go to the lines and find out. Hello, Malcolm.
In a former life, I was London Transport
financial risks manager.
Oh, right.
And we had an integrated transport policy.
Yeah.
And I have to say, living in Port Erin, that what I like to do, and I have quite a lot of visitors over, is catch the train from Port Erin into Douglas, and then the tram, the horse tram along to the electric railway, and then from the electric railway up at Laxey on the funicular railway to the top, and then come back. And that is a wonderful day out.
Okay.
I know a lot of people don't live in Port Erin, but a lot of people do live in Douglas. And so my view on it is, if we're going to preserve it, and I think it is worth preserving, stick it on the prom,
Yeah.
but have a start and destination rather than stopping it sort of in the middle of nowhere where there's no particular reason why anybody would want to go on it.
Yeah.
I actually feel that it serves a purpose,
Okay.
going all the way along the front.
You see, I wondered whether or not that was still the case, that people actually used it for transport rather than as a sort of a seaside novelty. You are saying that you definitely do use it as transport.
Well, I do, and I know a number of people who have the same
Okay.
sort of modus operandi as I.
Yeah, good.
Now, I can't say that a day tripper to I coming in on one of the boats is going to want to, or have time to do all that. But it does seem to me that if you're going to have it, having a worthwhile start point and destination is much better than having something that just is going part way along the prom and then you think, well, where do I go from here?
Sure, got you. All right, again, good points, Malcolm. Thanks for calling.
Take care, bye.
Cheers, bye-bye. Having returned from Brighton this weekend to a totally packed town full of visitors and cafe society, the island will never have access to such footfall as a beachside resort in the UK. When you look closely, beyond the garishly fashionable painted shops and cafes, even Brighton is a very run-down town city. However, they don't have horse-drawn trams running along their prom. We in Douglas do. It's our differences that make us different. Keep the horse trams where they are, with future development projects working around this tourist asset, not against it. Regards from Ernie. Thank you, Ernie. Dear Stu, I don't normally get the chance to hear your show and normally save my comments for the Man in Line on Sunday. Well, 2 weeks Phil Gorn was on the Sunday show and clearly said that he and his department had got the loss of running the horse trams down from £800,000 over the next 2 years to a remarkable £68,000. I asked Phil live on the show how he did it. Was he a genius, or were Douglas Corpy that bad? To be fair, he said he wasn't a genius, but then stated that the massive saving was due to the removal of excess management salaries at Douglas Corpy, who'd been running the horse trams before. No wonder it was losing money. Surely now it could be saved in some small part, but not in the middle of the road. Thanks for your time, Rich. Thank you, Rich. Thanks for getting in touch.
The Nation Station. Manx Radio.
Is the younger generation worse off than those that went before them? Millennials could become the first generation to earn less than the one before them. The Research Foundation think tank says under 35s are earning £8,000 less during their 20s than a typical person from Generation X, or these generations. I'm apparently a baby boomer, so I lived in a shoebox in Midlet Road. But that's not important. The report has found some of the pay squeeze is down to millennials entering the job market at the start of the recession. Is the younger generation getting a raw deal, or could it create a more stable system in future if incomes were to dip now? Alan says, yet more proof from pension deficits to global pollution, war and strife, and now this survey. The over 30s generations have really cocked it up for future generations. I don't know whether or not that's fair, Alan. I mean, we all just sort of react to the world that we're living in at the time, don't we? We all do our best for ourselves and our families, and the world and our at large and our friends and. I don't know that anybody's particularly sort of cocked things up, although it is a train of thought. Stu, each new generation seems to expect more and more. When I was younger, colour TV with BBC Two was a luxury. Shoebox at Midlet Road. Nowadays, everybody wants the latest Wi-Fi gadgets and expects benefit entitlements and housing, especially if they're single with children, says David H. That's a bit of an entrenched view, David H. You know, you're talking about a very small percentage of people really expecting benefit entitlements and housing and latest Wi-Fi gadgets and things. Well, I expect that there were those things when you were a young fella, not Wi-Fi and gadgets and things, but there were things that people had. Like I say, my dad used to have a brand new car every 2 or 3 years, and that wasn't unusual. I don't think, amongst the sort of upper working classes at the time. I think that a lot of people were in the same boat where they got new cars every 2 or 3 years. And I don't know many people now who buy new cars even. So that's a big chunk of change, isn't it? Stu, can you tell me where you got this information from and if it's fact or conjecture, and how can I obtain a copy? That from Richard. Yes, I can tell you a little bit about this. It's well, you can find out more about it because the BBC have picked up the story, and they say the research comes as Prime Minister Theresa May warned last week of a growing divide between a more prosperous older generation and a struggling younger generation. A think tank has launched a commission to explore growing inequality between generations. It'll be launched at an event in London on Monday, attended by David Willits, Executive Chairman of the Resolution Foundation, TUC General Secretary Francis O'Grady and CBI Director General Carolyn Fairbairn. And the person that we heard from was Torsten Bell, Director of the Resolution Foundation. So if you Google Resolution Foundation, I expect you'll probably find out more about it. I'm 58. I've worked non-stop since I was 15, fairly skinned, and all I've got to look at is Eddie's allowance whilst helping to fund lavish lifestyles for the chosen few. The younger hopefully will do a better job. Okay, well, yes, I feel with you on that, I think. Stu, who are all these rich that should give their hard-earned cash to the poor? Who are the poor? The lazy, 20-somethings that you see strolling about Strand Street, too lazy to work or even speak properly. The benefit culture, says James. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Right then. Stu, I don't think the modern generation is disadvantaged. Those of us brought up as young adults in the 60s and 70s mostly bought everything on HP. Modern children expect all the new gadgets. We had to wait, says Norman. Well, I don't know about that, Norman. I mean, there weren't gadgets when we was kids. There weren't gadgets and things like that. I was very fortunate. I think my parents bought me a bike when I was, 12 or 13, a couple of bikes probably, and then bought me a motorbike when I was 16 and helped me to buy a car when I was 17. But by that time, I was working, so I was tipping up into the family coffers each week. But yes, HP, I'd like to say that my parents were good savers. I don't know that they were necessarily. We were never horribly short of cash, but there was never a surplus of cash around the house, and if there were any big purchases, it was always got on the drip feed. But I would suggest that probably the interest rates that were charged by hire purchase companies in those days were a lot less than people pay now for credit cards. Nobody thinks twice about banging something on a credit card, but the interest rates are huge, I'm sure, compared to what used to be HP interest charges. Gary says the main difference is now they want everything, and we were happy with a black and white TV and food on the table. I don't know that we were happy with that, but we didn't know any better. We didn't know that colour TV was round the corner, or satellite, or computers, or any of those things. If we did, we would probably have gone after them. You know, we were happy with black and white TV and food on the table because that's all there was at the time. I've long ago realised that, you know, it's not being on the way to being a millionaire that makes you happy. It's being able to go around the supermarket, throw stuff in the basket and not have to check the price as you go along to make sure you've got enough money at the end of the when you get to the checkout. That's happiness for me. I think that these things change with age, don't they? One time I wanted to rule the world and be a master of the universe, but not anymore. Quite happy if I can go around the supermarket and not worry about the cost of what's in the trolley.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the introduction of laws allowing same-sex marriage and civil partnerships for opposite-sex couples a positive thing for the island's reputation? From this Friday, same-sex marriage will be legal here in the Isle of Man. In Tynwald yesterday, it was announced that royal assent had been given to the Marriage and Civil Partnership Amendment Act. It also means the island's the first place in the British Isles to allow opposite-sex couples, traditional couples, to enter into civil partnerships. Is the introduction of legislation a positive step for the island's reputation, do you think? Or do you feel the new laws are unnecessary? Could there not have been an island referendum on this matter, asked one of our contributors. Well, I suppose there could be a referendum on absolutely everything, but surely that's why we employ politicians, isn't it? To do the things that need to be done. Question is whether or not this needed to be done, I suppose. Sorry, Alan, it's all about you and your sexuality. Now you've got what you wanted, you'll probably retire soon, says Jim. I don't know if that's fair or not. It might have made it more of an issue for the Chief Minister, but I don't think it's that's the only reason at all. And I don't know that it would inform his decision whether or not to stand again or retire. I don't think the rest of the world could be bothered one way or the other if this legislation's been passed. We've enjoyed 30 years of economic growth without it. Mr. Bell and the gay community may make a song and dance about it, but most of the island's population couldn't really be bothered. Hopefully now Tynwald can get onto the more pressing needs like pensions and getting things like the prom done, says Alan. OK, Alan, you got what you wanted, for goodness sake. Will you and others stop playing the victim and start worrying about what legacy you've had a hand in, i.e. $3 billion deficit that you leave for everybody else to pay for? Strong words. Hey boy, who cares? This is about same-sex marriage. We're all doomed anyway. We're all doomed, I say. Bring on the election. That's from Soak G up a big head, he says. This is a good text. I'm sure that if I was repeatedly told by an absence of fair legislation that I was wrong to love my husband or that my relationship meant less, I would have fought, and it's amazing that it took this long to get through. Thank you. I think that makes a good point. No, it's not good. A less good point. You need to explain yourself. Why is it not good? Do you object to it on moral grounds, on religious grounds? Why is it not good? Do you think it was a waste of legislative time? You need to give me a bit more than saying, no, it's not good. It's against God's law. All right, okay. End of the world these days, decline of moral standards, etc., etc. Yes, okay, well, I suppose, I've got to respect people's views. So if you feel that strongly about it, then it is a point of view. It's one that not many people, I would suggest, agree with, but it is a point of view. Stu, it's a fantastic decision for today's world. We've had electricity in the Isle of Man for years. Let's start living in the 21st century, not the Dark Ages, says Mike. I wonder if that's the sort of way that we ought to be thinking about horse trams. Against which God's law? Atheists don't believe in God, so which God? The one that I still pray to, says Dog. Well, that's the concern about it, I suppose, if you're not a religious person. In a world full of hatred and prejudice, well illustrated by some of the callers, let's celebrate it when two people love each other. I'm sure an all-loving God, if one exists, would agree, says Sue. Are we going to get 2 more people coming over to get married? Don't think so, says Dave. Are we going to get more people coming? I wouldn't have thought so. But, maybe it's a niche area for tourism in the Isle of Man. If you've got a point of view about this, whether or not same-sex marriage legislation was a good move, or whether or not it's one of those, it doesn't affect me, not really interested, don't really care, do you think, as people have said, it's a positive move, and it's certainly a positive move for the Isle of Man? As far as the international community is concerned. Pam sent me an email. She says, as you say, Stu, why can't people just be nice? That'd do it. Just the one law would be required under my benevolent dictatorship. Be nice. You've stolen something. That's not nice, is it? No, it isn't. Right, well, you're going to have your hands cut off. Why would you want to deprive people of doing something which is not harming them or anyone else? Arguing it on religious grounds doesn't work for me. And by the way, without ramming down anyone's throat, I consider myself a Christian because, in effect, equality and fairness and being nice to others is the essence of Christianity. As I've said before, way back hundreds of years ago, marriage was, in fact, a civil contract. The church only got involved around the Middle Ages when they were asked to bless a marriage. They probably also saw the financial advantage of this move. Or am I being cynical? I think realistic rather than cynical, Pam. Thank you very much indeed for getting in touch. And this from Anne. She says, I have no problem with civil partnerships as people can't help who they love, but churches shouldn't be pushed into performing ceremonies. Yeah, I can see that as an argument. Marriage, ideally, is for a man and a woman and the procreation of children. In fairness, there are some people who don't like the acts associated with gay men, says Anne. Well, if you think about it, most sort of sex is fairly ghastly. I don't know about you, but, the first time that your parents sit you down and tell you about the birds and the bees, your first reaction as a child usually is, ew, people do that, ew. That sounds grim. I mean, you build up a tolerance to it over the years. If you don't like same-sex marriage, don't get married to someone the same sex. Simple. You don't walk into a restaurant and say, I don't want you eating your burger because I'm a vegetarian, says Charlie. Good point. Okay.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the decision to continue running the horse trams for the next 2 years a good one? Proposals to continue the running of the trams for the time being have been given the backing of Tynwald this week. The iconic service had been under threat after Douglas Corporation announced at the start of the year it would no longer fund it. Well, the Department of Infrastructure stepped in for the 2016 season and this month put forward a package of measures which will see the trams run to the War Memorial in 2017 and 2018. It also includes the transfer of some of the infrastructure to the DOI, and the motion was amended needed to ensure the horse trams ultimately would run the full length of the prom in the long term. So is this a positive step for the island's heritage after all the debate about it? Could it offer a boost to tourism over the next 2 years? Should the trams ultimately run along the whole length of the promenade, or do you prefer to see them phased out altogether? Kev sent me a text. Yawn, he says, what did I tell you, Stu? This topic was going to be on your show. No further comment, mate. Sick of the topic, says Kev. Well, I think probably a lot of us feel a bit like that. But the whole saga of the horse tram thing has been a bit like a sort of a soap opera, hasn't it? You know, the twists and turns over this year, particularly since Douglas Corpy decided they were going to close them down in January, was it? And then the government decided that they were going to get involved, and there's been so much debate about where the things were going to go, if they were going to stay. So it is a bit of a soap opera, you know, so no apologies for talking about it again. And who knows? This might be the end of it now. They might have a plan, but then somebody might come out of the woodwork and object to some part of the proposals, and then the whole thing's up in the air again, I suppose. The horse tram saga is like a recurring nightmare, never going away, says Alan. No wonder we can't get anything done on the island. All it takes is a campaign run by a few people to derail, I'll see what you did there, any plans to hopefully improve or upgrade the infrastructure. I wonder what projects will now get done, as the money will instead be spent on running horses up and down a road. The DOI's budget's getting smaller and smaller each year. What are the island's priorities, says Alan. Well, I'm no fan of the horse trams, as I've said before on the programme, but I'm in the minority. I appreciate that, and most people I talk to reckon that the horse trams are an important part, certainly, of our heritage. And it was interesting listening to the minister say that the government's looked at what the horse trams are used for, and they've decided that it's a sort of a heritage attraction rather than part of the infrastructure. So I think that's an interesting distinction to make. It would have been good to see the horse trams fully integrated into the promenade and North Quay redevelopments, using a track suitable for both horse trams and self-propelled units in a metro-style fashion. If you say to people, wouldn't it be good if we still had the Douglas to Peel to Ramsey Steel railway trains still running, they often agree. Let's not lose the horse trams, as hindsight's a terrible thing. It may lose money, but it's part of the bigger picture of tourism and identity of the island. If we got rid of every loss-making entity, then the Villa Marina and Gaiety Theatre would have been gravelled waste ground used as a car park a long time ago, says Rich. It's a valid point, yeah, absolutely. It's a case of knowing the value of things, isn't it? Horse trams. I'm a regular visitor to the Isle of Man. This is from Andy. Listen to the show on a daily basis. Good man. From Kilmarnock as well. Yes, I love the horse trams, and they're culturally a part of the island. I can appreciate the cost implications to the taxpayers. Personally, I'd love to see them stay. However, can I make a simple suggestion to the government? Boost tourism, regulate the steam packet company, drive down costs of coming to the island, and in turn it will boost the economy, including the horse trams. Good stuff. Yeah, that's from Andy in Kilmarnock. A different Andrew's called. I have no great wish either way, but as we do homestay every year, first thing that many visitors ask is where can they get the horse trams? It does bear thinking about. Yep, I'm happy to concede the point on that one. Money saved from scrapping the trams will cover the OAP's TV licences. They cause congestion all the time. The road can't cope with trams and cars, so it's one or the other. This government's crackers just sit debating earning the salaries but not actually getting things done. Just saying. And we've got David on the line to talk about it. Hello, David.
I'd put them on the walkway.
Yes.
Next to the sunken gardens or line.
Yes.
I'd only have one line.
Yes.
And the horses would be out of the traffic.
Yep.
Because of all this animal cruelty and stuff that some people have got in their heads.
Yep.
And that would be it.
And maybe a little sort of thin patch of pavement between the trams and the rest of the walkway, so that, you know, if people are blind or if you've got toddlers or whatever, you there's actually a physical barrier to walking on the tracks, maybe.
Well, you're not going to please everybody no matter what you do.
That's true.
So that's my opinion anyway.
Well, David, I agree entirely with everything that you've just said, and when I'm elected benevolent dictator for life, you're going to be my transport minister.
Yeah, I might get...
All right, thank you very much for your call.
Then.
That's what David thinks. Wheels under the trams, then they can go anywhere and do away with the tracks, says Andrew in Peel. That's been suggested a few times. It just wouldn't work, I don't think. I mean, I don't think the carriages could be converted to run on pneumatic tyres and things. Secondly, it'd look ridiculous, frankly, wouldn't it? And it does away with the whole heritage side of it if you modify them to that sort of extent. It'd be like having the Flying Scotsman on rubber wheels. It just wouldn't work, I don't think. Yes, it might get over the problem of having to lay tracks, but apart from that, I can't see it working. Very sensible comment about the steam packet being taken to task. Perhaps this should be extended to flight providers too, such as Fly Maybe and the service that they offer. Service in quotes. We can have all the heritage and tourist attractions going, but they're useless if people can't afford to get here. Let's go to the lines because we've got Gillian on at Doon Glen to tell us what she thinks about the horse tram decision. Hello, Gillian.
I am very, very pleased.
Good.
I'm very pleased that they are carrying on. As you know, that though we're grown up family, we have had season tickets now for over 12 years.
Yes.
Every year we buy a season ticket.
Good stuff. Excellent.
Sometimes I can't make it, but I still got my this year's ticket in my wallet.
Good.
The gentleman before was saying, why don't they put them on
Pneumatic tyres, yeah.
Now then, the thing is that that is going to make the horse pull harder.
That's true.
Once a horse has got that memento to pull, then it's on rail and it glides.
Yes, yeah.
So it would be less.
Yes, it'd be very hard work. I never thought about that, but it would be hard work to pull something on pneumatic tyres rather than on rails, I suppose.
On pneumatic tyres, very much so.
Yeah, okay, good point,
also,
Julie.
Yes,
Go
because
on.
even if you see horses that are on the river in the UK, the horse-drawn barges,
Yes.
the people think, oh, those boats, those barges are very heavy. Yes,
But once you get them
but
moving, yeah, it's not
when
bad,
you
is
get
it?
it moving, it glides.
Good stuff.
Yes.
All right.
I didn't like the idea either of somebody saying there was a hotel that was complaining.
Yeah.
If they don't like it, which it is heritage, let the hotel close down and move out.
There's a boat in the morning for hoteliers that don't like our horses. All right, Gillian, thank you very much indeed for your call. We've got, I think, Ian on, who's in Workington. Hello, Ian.
I'm just shocked that they're even considering, what they're thinking about with the horse trams. I mean, yeah, you've got to look at parallels with Blackpool. I mean,
Yeah.
Blackpool, the trams run on the prom, with no problems at all.
Well, yeah, but not horse trams. I mean, they got rid of the horse trams in Blackpool, probably a century ago, didn't they?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the electric trams are a lot faster than the horse trams.
Yeah.
I can't see a problem in having the horse trams on the prom.
No, on the walkway. No, I can't.
But the other issue is, of course, as well, is the horse trams aren't the only problem on the prom, are they? I mean, the parking is just horrendous, isn't it, on the prom? I mean, if they took away the parking and had it somewhere else, then the road would be an awful lot wider for all the other users.
Yeah, I think that the plan that they're looking at the moment sort of addresses that to an extent, because there was a concern that depending on where the horse tram tracks were located, could have a detrimental effect on parking. Then other people complained and said, well, you want to move the horse tram so that you can get more car parking spaces in. That's not the idea. But I think that probably the current scheme, I think we'd probably keep around about the same number of spaces, just move them a little bit.
Well, there is that. And the other sort of final issue I wanted to mention was I've just come back from the island yesterday, and I was shocked that they don't run on a Monday in the summer.
Don't they run at all on Mondays? I know that they've got a little bit smarter about which days they're going to run them, because if it looks as though it's going to be quiet, then they don't run them now.
Well, I mean, I went on them yesterday morning.
Yeah.
What day are we on now? Tuesday.
Yeah.
And from the first tram to mid-morning, they were absolutely chock-a-block.
Oh, well, that makes a nice change, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the weather helped, obviously, but I'm looking at the timetable now. I mean, every Monday in July, every Monday in August except the last Monday, and 3 Mondays in June. and the Tuesdays in June as well.
Well,
they don't run. It's just bizarre, when.
I think that what happened, Ian, is that when government took over the service, they looked at it to try and decide whether they could make any efficiencies, and because it was running at a huge loss, and Douglas ratepayers were having to pick it up. Now it's effectively being run by government. They've decided that they were going to do it, but they were going to try and save some money, and they appear to have done a pretty good job of that. They've reduced the deficit massively, but I think they've done it by doing things like that, by using staff in a smarter way, and by not operating on days that they think it's going to be too quiet to really cover the costs. So that is one of those balance things, isn't it? I appreciate what you're saying, but you'd not want them to be running if they're going to be empty all day on Mondays, for example, and I expect that somebody probably...
No, but I mean, they could run a lighter service.
Maybe.
I mean, they run four trams during the day now. Now, you could say have a couple of days where there was only one tram or two trams in service and make 2 of the days a lighter service.
Right.
You see what I mean.
Well, I mean, why don't you write in? Because, I'm sure that they would welcome suggestions. Whether or not they do anything about it or not, I don't know. But it might be something that they'd not thought of. Who knows?
I think the one thing that the island in general should think about, though, is bringing back the old day trips from places like Fleetwood and Llandudno and stuff like that. Made it a lot easier for just day trippers. When you only got 5-6 hours on the island, you didn't go very far. So what did you do? You used the horse trams.
Yeah,
and I can't think of a better way to spend a nice, pleasant summer's day than riding up and down the prom on the island's unique selling point.
I remember that I came as a day tripper when I was a child, I think, from Fleetwood, here and then back in the day. So, a big fan of that kind of service, definitely.
Well, you can't do it now. I mean,
no, you
the
can't.
Heysham ferry is just not possible unless you really want to be up for 36 hours. Liverpool, it's not possible. If you get an early flight, maybe that's possible. But that's a long day as well with the security implications that you've got to go through. You've got to be there 2 hours before.
Yeah, you have.
It extends your day quite a long time. The island has got to realise that it's an absolute jewel. And
we've just got to get more people here and make it easier and cheaper for people to get here. That's the answer to it all, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right.
But anyway, my vote is firmly in favour of the horse trams, keeping them regardless. Doesn't matter where it is, just keep the things.
All right, Ian. It's been lovely talking to you, and thank you very much for visiting our island, and hope you come back soon.
Oh, too right. I'll be there before you know it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. What a nice fella. If the politicians paid the missing years of NIC payments, as we were told of their retirements and their soon-to-be paid large pensions, the promenade resurfacing would be paid for without the cost of the taxpayer, says John. Move the trams to the roadside of the gardens and move pavement and parking to the left of the tracks. You're not losing any space for parking and no horses in the road. Good. Can't agree that the horses should be moved to the walkway. They'd be troubled by loose dogs and children and discarded bags and crisp wrappers. Well, no more so than where they are now, surely. They're far safer on the road where such distractions are under better control. Yeah, and cars and motorbikes and cyclists veering in front of them and traffic lights and things. And there would be all sorts of complaints from people who dislike the idea of excrement being too close to the same loose dogs and children. The walkway is also too narrow north of the War Memorial, even for a single track, says Jenny. Okay. Isn't a tram with pneumatic tyres called a bus, says John. Probably not if it's dragged along by a horse, I don't know. I'm very much a horse tram supporter and sign the petitions to keep them going. My reward is a regular lashing of mustard-coloured poo on my silver car. Why can't the guy who takes the fares clear up the dung and sell it to gardeners, says Brian. Yeah, I think Brian's mentioned that a couple of times already. And this one from Josh, he said, and it's a good point, the DOI cocked up when they tried to pass these plans. If they'd given the public 2 alternatives, being on the walkway or no trams at all, the job might have started by now. Too many ideas means that nothing gets done. What a good thought. Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Either we're going to put them there or we're going to get rid of them altogether. Oh, no, put them there. Why not build a big multi-storey car park on the Summerland site, then people could use the horse tram to travel up and down the prom, says Danny. Good in theory, in practice, I bet very few people would use it, Danny. Your last caller is correct. The horse tram should be run by the Sunken Gardens with a picket fence similar to Blackpool. The lines could be future-proofed for connection to the MER so that visitors can connect directly from the boat. That from John.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Our forthcoming changes to the state pension in the Isle of Man, a positive step forward towards securing pensions into the future. Proposed changes to the Manx state pension were approved by Tynwald members this week. But it wasn't plain sailing for the man who brought the motion forward, Treasury member Bill Henderson, MLC. There was a call for a select committee to be set up to look at the proposals. That was rejected. Some of the members said that they remained confused by what was being put on the table. Treasury now aims to spend the next 3 years working towards turning its plans into legislation, resulting in a weekly state pension of £170, with people having to contribute for 35 years to be entitled to that full amount. Are these changes a positive step for future generations of pensioners? Could more drastic reforms have been carried out, or do the proposals go further than you think they ought to? First text, one thing seems obvious is that Mr Henderson was way out of his depth on this. Not surprised that people are confused. Stu, people just don't trust Mr Henderson, especially in regard to Treasury consultations. Why should ordinary Manx folk subsidise gold-plated pensions for civil and public servants? Good point. But live off subsistence-level pensions themselves. The whole thing is totally inequitable. Keep it up, says William. Bill Henderson isn't out of his depth. It's just that some people in MHKs think that if they stick their heads in the sand, the problem will go away, says Dave. That's very true as well, Dave, and I think our politicians are guilty of that quite a lot. You know, when decisions need to be made, it's a case of, well, let's have a select committee, let's do this, let's get a consultation, let's do, I don't know about you, I just think that at times it would be better to make a decision, even if there's a chance it's going to be the wrong one, rather than keep prevaricating about things. Let's just do it. If it's horribly wrong, then we can always revisit it later. And all right, it might cost us a few quid to make the mistake, but let's revisit it. But let's just do it. Let's crack on, because something's got to change. Whatever they do, they'll make sure that their own fat pensions are protected. Jokers spring to mind, but it's not funny, says Steve. Yeah, okay. Andrew calls some basic thinking on this. If I put a set amount of money into a pot, but I'm not getting that set amount out, where's the money? Must be somewhere, and that pot must have made money. It must have. Where is it? Bob called with another valid point. Again, they seem to be concentrating on the state pensions, but there's no absolute rush to change that at the moment. The cost is a fraction of the public sector pension liability. That's where the problem is. They should stop wasting time on this and work on that problem instead. David Cole, one thing that's not been mentioned about the public sector pensions is that we're on zero rate of inflation at the moment. These pensions are index linked, so if inflation goes up by 5%, so do they. And the pensions will be depleted even quicker, but they're also not being transparent about their own pensions. They say they want transparency about everything except their own stuff. OK, fair dues. Let's go to the lines. I think we've got Eddie wants to have a chat about this. Hello, Eddie.
What I can't understand is this format that he's brought forward is entirely different to the one we all voted on at the museum.
Oh, right.
When he had the public meeting.
Yes.
And we were all given little digits to vote on different things. Now, then he proposed £180 a week.
Yes.
And 45 years before you got a full pension. Now, he says he's got public consent on this, but he hasn't, because it's a different format.
OK, but I mean, there were more meetings than just at the museum, I think, weren't there? Didn't they do a roadshow?
The whole way through, it was always 180.
OK.
And what I'm saying is it's this 170 and 130. By the way, I think the 35 is quite sensible.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to come to the Isle of Man if they're going to have to work another 10 years, are they?
Well, true.
Before they get a pension.
Yeah.
But also, Mr. Henderson and Mr. Tia keep saying that all us existing pensioners will be no worse off.
Yeah.
But they know they're telling porkies. Because from 2019, they're going to take 5% off the Manx supplement each year.
Right.
Now, if they're taking 5% off, they're not going to increase it, are they?
Okay.
So each year, it goes on. He's already now, for the last 4 years, he's gone and frozen the Manx supplement.
Yeah.
So now the Manx supplement, instead of being worth 50%, is now only worth about 45%. So each year he's pinching all the time off you. And now they're saying we're not going to be worse off, but of course we're not going to be better off.
No, isn't it just a case of just basic sort of sums, though, Eddie, that, you know, there's so much money in the system and they just can't afford to do it the way that they've been doing it now and they need to change it?
Yeah, well, I asked one of the men who went and brought this bill forward when it was originally brought forward, Dominic Delaney.
Yeah.
And it was a gentleman's agreement that it should be 50%.
Right.
Of the existing pension for the Manx supplement.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Tier has gone and said, well, he's not bound by that. So each year he's gone and froze it.
Yeah.
And then from 2019, it's going to be frozen every year. So anybody who lives in another 10 or 12 years, it's going to be down to about 30%.
Right.
So you can't turn around and say it's not going to affect us.
Oh, sure, but I mean, the trouble is, Eddie, I'm just trying to look at the bigger picture on this because, yes, of course, all these things affect pensioners, and I'm going to be a pensioner not that far in the future, so it's something that concerns me. Well, but you've got to look at just the basic economics of it. That if they keep on doing what they're doing at the moment, the money is going to run out, so they need to do something.
Yeah, but the way that I look at it is, Stu, at the present time, the base rate is very, very low for interest. Have they gone and said, well, for the next 30 years it's going to stay the same?
Well,
I'm sure that the interest rate is going to go up. Yeah. And if the interest rate goes up, surely our pension pot should go up as well.
Yeah, you'd have thought.
And I just don't feel that they've taken, as far as they've gone and looked at it, they've looked at the figures as they are today, and they haven't gone and said, well, it could increase by 5%.
You would hope that the experts have taken that into account and there's a plan B, but
that's the worry.
Well, yeah, it is. That is the worry. Yeah. All right, Eddie, thank you very much for your call. You make some good points as ever. Stu, I've never heard yet any MHK admit that the Manx people have by far less disposable money from their incomes than our counterparts in the UK because of the cost of living and the outrageous cost of energy in the island, says Mike. Well, it swings and roundabouts, Mike. I mean, I pay more for my electric and for my petrol and for my gas and for this, that and the other, but I pay less in income tax, I suppose, than my counterparts in the UK. And I live in the Isle of Man, so we can't always compare. And people complain when politicians do that, and they only ever tend to draw comparisons when it bears out what they're trying to sell us at the time. But we can't always compare ourselves with the UK. And the fact of the matter is, and I hate to say it, but now I'm properly sort of integrated Manx I can. If you don't like it, there's always that. No, I can't say it even now. A lot of today's OAPs can't have any grandchildren because they all seem to be worrying. All they seem to be worrying about is what they can get out of the system for themselves, not the mess that no change will leave future generations in. And that from Alan. Well, that's a fair point as well, Alan, I think.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who contributed to the programme this week. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or you can share your thoughts at any time on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll find an update of what's being discussed each day on the programme. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.